Hey Void, you ever stare at the sun so long you start seeing spots but you just can't look away? In terms of bad movies, Food Fight's pretty much the equivalent of staring at the sun. It's an experience, and I'll admit, this is not even my first time watching this film, but this is a movie you have to show other people. And I will say, watching my partner's reactions to this film were very satisfying. Alright, so Food Fight. Largely regarded as one of the worst animated film bombs of all time. My god. Does it definitely live up to that? So, Food Fight. It's ugly. That's really what you can boil down to a lot of things. The animation is horrible. Oh, this was one guy who was so sure he was Icarus flying high, but he didn't even get close to the sun. He just jumped off a cliff. So, this film had a $65 million budget, brought in 73, almost 74,000 at the box office. And I don't blame it. This movie is hypnotically bad. It has some of the choppiest animation I've ever seen, and I will give some credit to the animators. They tried, but apparently at one point the hard drives containing everything they'd animated so far were stolen. So I had to start all over and cut corners in order to make it work. So they switched to using like a weird motion capture, which made things very choppy, and most noticeably gave them much more limited emoting capabilities. And very soulless, dead eyes. Okay. This movie's problems are innumerable, but for the sake of argument, we'll try to go over some of this. So, the plot is centered in a supermarket where all the food icons come alive after dark. And, they kind of live their life. Our main character is. Most of the main characters here are fictionalized icons, or Ikes as they call them in the movie. Okay, fine. Dex, dog detective, a serial mascot, is working on getting engaged to into a raisin mascot named Sunshine Goodness. I can let that slide. It does sound like a mascot name for a raisin company, sure. So yep, but I will say right off the bat that leads to a very weird and uncomfortable romance between our two characters down there. One guy who's an anthropomorphic dog. My camera's really not picking that up very good. It doesn't want to stare at the sun. Wow. That's just not showing up. You're not missing much. And another that's much more humanized other than her cat ears and tail, voiced by Hilary Duff. Dex Dog Detective, voiced by Charlie Sheen. Anyway, but right before he could propose to her, she goes missing. Jump cut to 6 months later, where now he's out of the private eye business and is now a club owner because Casablanca. And a new mascot is moving in for Brand X detergent, and she's begins not so subtly causing the death of other icons to replace them with Brand X ones and take over the supermarket. Dex is finally encouraged to come out of retirement and stop the madness. And then it gets into convoluted plots about recalls and what happened to Sunshine Goodness and yada 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 yada. The plot just barely makes any sense already. Okay, let's just kind of start picking this apart. Where do I begin? Where do I begin? Okay, first, the world here makes no sense. Okay, so the serial, all the mascots come to life after dark. Okay, fine. Thing that's been done before. Toy Story's done that okay. But then they have to get back in before the store opens. But weirdly, they seem to have like their own parallel world that's inside the boxes and aisles, but they still have to hide, I guess. But like at one point, Dex and whatever then Daredevil Dan, which is this hideous chocolate squirrel that's voiced by Wayne Brady, have to cross the supermarket while it's open, which things look weirdly time sped up, I guess, but they're not supposed to be seen. But what happens if they get seen? Doesn't really establish it. I mean, they're worried about being stepped on, I guess, but they're kind of the way they're thrown around the supermarket, they pretty much had to have been seen, so nothing really happened. So we have no interest in discussing the logistics of its own world. And I guess supposedly when an icon dies, its product eventually just fizzles and fades. I don't know how that works, but apparently it does. So on the logistic level, this is a mess. One of the main selling points is they're going to try to use as many actual mascots as possible. I mean, right down the cover, you got several. Most of them are in like one scene tops or barely used at all. And I mean, the only other one that is really seen often is Mr. Clean. But original advertisements had a lot to do with Chester Cheetah, but he's not in this at all. And apparently a lot of mascots pulled out after they found out how their characters were going to be treated, or just when they saw how hideous things were going to be, I guess. So Chester Cheetah's not in this. Little Debbie was supposed to be in it, but she was going to be sexually harassed by a chocolate squirrel, so yeah, they pulled out. There's a gay chocolate vampire bat that was going to be hounding the chocolate squirrel character. Gay chocolate bat in a disco suit is still in it, but he was originally going to be Count Chocula, I guess. But I guess they pulled out. This movie's weird and weirdly fetishy too. I mean, there's a lot of innuendo in this movie, a lot. Not to mention Hilary Duff's character's skirt is really short, and he keeps swinging her around, so there's plenty of upskirt shots of his character. And then the main villain is voiced by Eva Longoria, the Brand X mascot. She's a Nazi, I guess. A sexy Nazi, important. As she's seducing everyone, she appears in a schoolgirl outfit to dance sexually with the main character. I am not making this up. Before getting back into like all leather for her main villain points. She's in scanty outfits through a lot of this movie, and usually posing very suggestively for a kids' movie. There's images, and like I mentioned, she's a Nazi. There's a lot of Nazi imagery towards the end as the supermarket Gestapo starts being formed. This movie is like offensive on all levels. It's ugly, it's crass, and it's downright insensitive. Particularly said the Nazi imagery, since they mentioned that the dog character is Jewish, I guess. It was a one-way throwaway line at the end, but apparently... Oh, boy. Then one of the original directors had no idea how to make animated films, so I guess he'd see a scene and ask them to do a retake on it. Now, I understand that that's not something you can really do for animation. And his directions, quoting from IMDb here, were to make it more awesome, or do it 30% better. Apparently he lost the studio millions before he was fired. But that was one of the original writers and directors before they was fired by the studios. But he was so sure that he was going to be making greatness here. He was hedging all his bets on this movie. He wanted merchandising. He wanted to do an ice show. He wanted a franchise. He was so proud of his idea that he kept promoting it as he was going to be the new Pixar. This was going to be his Casablanca, and hence his Casablanca references, and none of it was to pass. It's now regarded as one of the worst flops in history, and oh my god. Christopher Lloyd does the voice in this. Did you lose a bet, man? Do you have bills to pay? Do you need help? Oh boy. If you enjoy bad movies, this is a sight to see because there's nothing like Foodfight. Watching someone else watch Foodfight, it's gotta be a great one of my favorite experiences, though. Oh boy. This is one MacGuffin. Yeah, one. That's all you can give to this thing. And I'm just kind of spacing with what else I could possibly say, because there's a lot to unpack in this movie, and I've barely scratched the surface on. This almost needs like a play-by-play, scene-by-scene to just dissect it, because how did this happen? Even assuming them having to redo a lot of footage, scripting itself is abysmal, so that doesn't solve that. The voice actors are trying, I guess, but and the weirdly sexual moments are you can't blame that on the animation quality. No, it's from a writer director level. This was written and directed by Lawrence Kasanoff, and man, what was going on through your head? This is, I don't know. He produces a lot of films, but this is, I don't know, as well as voicing the Weasel character in this. So this is pretty much the only one of the few things he actually directed. Like, I think people should see this movie. I do. But it has to be approached with protective gear, gloves, and should be viewed from a safe distance. Preferably with someone else in front of you that you can watch react to it head on, so they can take the brunt of this. Foodfight. Handle with care.